This is the session where we have national government, state government, international speakers, international experts, and city politicians. So we have an entire spectrum of everybody who works at this smart city mission, which is actually one of the largest missions in the world. So welcome everyone, and let's have a wonderful session to start with. We start this session with a video, which is a video that is going to talk about a collaboration of India and German government and how they have collaborated on various issues to make urban India a better place. Well, meanwhile, we all have kits for all of you prepared. Please come and take it from Shweta here. Yeah, the kits are kept on both sides.
India and Germany, two countries that believe in democracy and share similar beliefs and rich cultures. 2018 is a watershed year in Indo-German relation, as India and Germany complete 60 years of successful Indo-German development cooperation. With great cooperation come greater results. A remarkable journey in the Indo-German relations over the last 6 decades. 1958 marked the beginning of Indo-German development cooperation. They share common goals and democratic values. With financial support from Germany, small farmers in the Nilgiris got loans and technical help in determining favorable cultivation of potatoes in over 16,000 farm holdings. With a financial contribution of 250 million euros, Germany has supported the pulse polio immunization program. In 2014, WHO declared India polio-free. Germany provided concessional financing for the 125 megawatt solar power plant in Sakri, Maharashtra. It supplies 220,000 households with clean electricity. Since 2016, Germany has been working to develop Kochi, Bhubaneswar and Coimbatore into smart cities. Here, in the Indian city of Kochi, a unique public transportation project is taking shape. India's first water metro, funded by KfW. Germany has provided a loan of 85 million euros to finance the metro and will oversee the procurement of modern vehicles needed to transport up to 100 passengers per journey.
This is a project which is to be completed in a time span of 4 years. 76 kilometers of the waterways is going to be covered by 78 boats.
The project also includes the reconstruction of several roads leading off from the jetties in order to introduce safer traffic lighting and ease congestion.
Electricity is being used, and it's going to be battery driven. So the carbon footprint is also sought to be reduced in this manner.
The two cities joining Kochi's development are Bhubaneswar in Orissa and Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu. India and Germany, sharing common principles with mutual respect and trust. As India and Germany celebrate 60 years of development cooperation in 2018, they are ready to face global challenges together to ensure a more stable and inclusive world.
Okay, so now a formal welcome for this India and German collaboration. Now we are going to talk about how India and Germany together, collectively and in their own respective states and countries have done some things where there is a great learning from each other, there is collaboration, there is partnership, and there is learning from each other. Now to come to introduce the Indian context, we have very senior Indian bureaucrat. He is the Joint Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, Mr. Amrit Abhijat. May I welcome Mr. Amrit Abhijat, please, on the dais. Mr. Abhijat has about 20 to 25 years of experience in the field of urban development, housing, tourism, heritage, and also cultural management. And he is right now spearheading one of the most challenging and one of the most needed session, or you can say a mission for India, which is about 12 million housing for 2022. So he is responsible for that mission, and we welcome you and to give an overall perspective on India and India's smart cities.
I need to point it on the side. Yes,
Just that one is
Samir, just a minute. I don't think it's here.
yeah, he can't see it here.
It's PDF, you can see.
PDF you can't see?
No. PowerPoint, yes. PDF, no. PDF is there. Only
So in that case you have.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am speaking on the Smart Cities program in India. As you can see that we as a country started this way. I'll ask you. Then, He's probably working. Okay. India started its smart cities journey in about 4 or 5 years back in 2015 when the new government took place. And as you can see that in the past 4 or 5 years, we are probably one of the countries where the smart city program has been ingrained very comprehensively and across 100 cities to begin with. Next. As you can see that we have a tremendous advantage of being one of the largest markets, also one of the largest growing industries. The growth in India has been very sustained, and our population base ensures that the traction that we need to draw from the overall market size will be very, very huge also. The 2001, you can see that the population was 285 million. This goes to 598 in 2031. And the number of million plus cities, it will gradually rise to 69 by the year 2025. As it is, the Smart Cities program is there in 100 cities already. And you can see that the total GDP contribution of these cities put together would be about 75% of the national wealth. So that's a huge opportunity there. We started with the 100 cities, and going at the secondary level is the 500 other cities which will gradually become smarter, and the other cities, 4,300, which are being readied at various stages to become more open to embracing the concept of change. Next. The Smart City Mission strategy focuses more on the smart city development because we are quite conscious that the entire gamut of things cannot be changed in one day. Therefore, certain areas are being taken up for smart city development, and it then gradually becomes a lighthouse, and from then we move on to making the entire city available for the projects. The redevelopment projects are, as is very obvious, it's a very old country, an ancient civilization. We have cities which have been for about 2,000 years now. They are also being made smart. Say, for example, the city of Banaras in Uttar Pradesh, which is the holy city, the redevelopment projects have been taken up there. Then we have the retrofitting projects and the greenfield projects in terms of new cities which are coming up, particularly in areas of Noida, Bangalore. You may have heard about it. The Pan City development embraces the concept of electronic surveillance systems, intelligent traffic management, metering, and integrated multi-transport systems, and the video online monitoring. But there is much more to it rather than just the digital aspect of what the change could be about. And infrastructure is another huge area where we are concentrating in the smart cities, apart from the digital transformation. So these are two areas where I think that we have a lot at stake, and also the mobilities in terms of either the train mobility or vehicular mobility, because in order to sustain the movement of population across the smart cities to workplaces and to their residences, we need a very, very good network of transport mobility, and that is what we are trying to attempt. Next. Next. Yeah. So the smart city is addressing the key issues of livability, because we have a huge population base, and a city will be called smart in our understanding only if we make it very, very livable, and the people feel very rewarded staying in that city in terms of the facilities that we can offer, either in terms of residences, which is housing, or as we move along the city on an everyday basis, whether it's the public facilities, the parks, various amenities, toilets, so on and so forth. The economic ability, because it needs to be a very good employment center. So we are planning it in a manner that they also become employment centers, but not in conflict with the overall living environment. And we are planning where they are integrated more with living spaces as well, and the distances are reduced. So cities are being replanned in a big, big way in terms of redevelopment projects that we are coming about. Sustainability, needless to say, is extremely important in today's world, and if we have to continue the Smart Cities program, it certainly needs to be much more sustainable. Citizen engagement was very, very critical to the planning process. When the Smart Cities program was launched, a lot of certain engagement was there in each city, and the works which were decided to be taken up primarily came from the citizens themselves, and it was a very, very unique experiment where millions and millions of people did say what they really wanted. Competition is very intrinsic to our strategy. City empowerment in terms of legislations that we have brought about is very important, because the SPVs, special purpose vehicles, were formed, and we did not go in for the traditional methods of division of roles and powers. We did form companies which could take care of their needs and also manage finances of their own. You'd be very happy to learn that a huge amount of investment was planned out from these SPV vehicles via floating bonds and other infrastructure financing aspects. Comprehensive, as I told you, it caters not only to mobility and transportation, but also goes much more deeper in terms of infrastructures that we are providing, and also perhaps looking at providing a skill development and educational base to these smart cities, because a city cannot be considered smart if its people do not get the kind of education to be able to fulfill the targets and the roles that a smart city needs to have, because you need a certain database people who run these databases, who run these corporations and bodies. Convergence is extremely important because given our size and the kind of responsibilities that we have in order to make a city smart, we are carrying this with the entire drainage aspects, the sewer lining. So these are supported by other missions also and other ministries as well, which is why we say that this is a very, very comprehensive model. Next. You can see that they have further been divided in 5 parts, whether it is the services, the financing, or the planning, technology, and governance. Governance structure has been really, really critical because we needed to change in a lot of thinking, a lot of laws in order to make us available for the kind of projects that were to be taken up, because otherwise it would take a lot of time. And we have included 100 cities where a lot of things are happening already because of change in the government structure. Without technology, I think where I come in today is that when I see how the other countries are performing, technology will have a very, very important role here. And we, the Indian delegation here and the entire country, awaits a lot of technological help that companies which are being represented here in FIRA can assist us in, whether it is for mobility, whether it is for data exchange, whether it is for running these municipal corporations, taxation in particular. We will be needing a lot of assistance in terms of the methods and the technologies which bring about this change. I was hearing the presentation by Catalonia and Barcelona yesterday, where I think they have been able to do a lot of things in taxation, policing, security, so on and so forth. So technology will have a very important role. Nothing happens without a planning. We will have to have a very long-term strategy. We are doing it in a big way, but we will be needing assistance here also, because our planners need that kind of a training. So that skill set will also have to be developed. There is some opportunity there. Finances, we have been able to cater to a lot of financing, but there's only so much you can do in a greenfield project. So this is one area where we're requiring help. Services, we've been able to manage well. The services industry in India is quite strong, but given the fact that a different skill set will be required for running these smart cities, there's opportunity here also. Next. A lot of innovation projects have been taken up in terms of capacity building. Capacity, as I told you, because our cities are large in number and we are a growing population, we see that the traditional model of running these municipal corporations and bodies at the local level need a different skill set, and to talk about a capacity enhancement would be really, really critical here, because with the old methods of running these technologies or perhaps systems of governance, we will not be able to make the kind of dent we really want to. So this is one area where capacity will be required at all levels in order to address the needs. Innovation zones, and here technology has been taken up in a big way. Next. So we are involving the people. We are setting up the urban innovation hub where data analytics is being done, but not in the manner that we would eventually want. A lot of things has to happen still. Capacity, as I told you, is being developed. Network of city data management officers are being planned, because they need to be posted to be able to get the right kind of data. There are also issues with regard to privacy domains and all that, so it needs a very, very good structure. The process is that these data is then pulled out, and we use this for services, particularly for mobility, getting access to government services, maybe pensions, scholarships, and so on and so forth. And these platforms are either mobile-based, web-based, as well as others. Next. The data smart cities are already in the making. The innovation hub has been stationed in the ministry in Delhi itself, and we have 5 regional urban centers with which there is coordination. This will further go down to the urban local bodies, where this will be pulled up, and one data management exchange system is being established where innovations can be talked about amongst various cities, and they can jointly experiment and work together as we go along. Next. As I told you, 100 smart cities innovation zones are happening, and the story is that India is just unfolding in terms of the kind of works that the smart city would require. So in the last 4 years, we have made a lot of investment, a lot of work has been ordered. We will see as we go along, tendered. But I think this is a story that will unfold in the next 2 decades or so. So there is a very long-term engagement that we can plan with the companies and countries here where we could work together in making the cities a better place to live in. And from that point of view, I think the work has just about begun. Next. The offices of Innovation City Centers, as I told you, have been set. This setup of National Urban Innovation Hub, the state-of-art collaboration with these platforms will be very important, and there is opportunity where we could work here as well. Next. This, as I told you, was sharing and learning experiences from amongst the various cities where collaborations will be made through the Urban Innovation Hub, where each city could learn from each other. And these are the 3 levels at which one will have a school approach to getting things done. If a particular municipal corporation is able to do something, then it is copied on to the others also. And there is learning within the physical environment as well as in the intellectual space. Next. Next. The sector-wise investment that we have done so far and is being planned is that water and waste management services is something that we need to intervene in a big way. And here the investment will be close to 3.72 billion. Energy and environment, as you know, energy requirements in our country is huge, and we are just about getting to fulfill those aspirations. But an investment of another 3.2 billion rupee will be required here, euros. The mobility, our country size being huge, is close to about 6 billion here. The ICT solutions will be about 2.8 billion. The social and economic development, perhaps the most important part of the Smart Cities program, where services will be provided, is another 5.5 billion rupees. The area development approach, where a lot of infrastructure is being planned and is being done at the moment, is 5.2 billion. These are the ways in which we have gone ahead. There is an opportunity where PPP is a very important part. We would like to increase this to the desirable level. Then convergence with other schemes have been very important. They have been able to raise finances through other sources also, as I told earlier, through the bonds and talking to various parts of the industries. Next. This is how it looks today, as in the works which are going on is 1,238 works have been completed. Almost like 3,500 different projects are underway, and of the number of projects which have been planned already is 4,135. So on an average, it comes to about 40-50 works projects at different cities. All cities are not working along the same lines, because it was a long drawn process where 20 cities were selected first and then it came later. Also, it depends a lot on the preparedness of the various smart cities, because there is geographical variation, there is economic variation, and there are cities which have taken a 4-year lead, but there are also cities which are just about a year or 2 old. So they need a lot of handholding, and it is here that the mutual collaboration through the Urban Innovation Hub can happen, where elders within the Smart City program can collaborate and share the knowledge, what they have earned over a period. You can see that the project cost, it's in INR, but as I told you, it's in few billion rupees that we have, and the achievement is for us to see. Next. The key areas which were taken up in various smart cities is the smart control and command centers. They have almost been installed in large number of cities, like the mega cities of Delhi, Agra, Kanpur is underway, and Indore, Pune. These are places where they are making it very, very useful for traffic management, for locating people, for management of services, garbage collection. There is public-private partnership in infrastructure projects in a big way. The smart roads have been done, about 127 of them. The vibrant public spaces, you are quite aware that India is also undergoing a Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, we call it. It's for the toilets, that a huge work is going on, and there both solid waste management as well as disposal of waste is being done in a very big way. The smart water, as we told you, we are laying down new systems absolutely because our requirements are huge and new cities are also being planned. So pipelines work is going on. And smart solar, a large number of cities have opted for the green energy sources, of which solar energy is one of them. And solar energy is a program which is a mission mode, and a lot of work is happening in large number of states because we get a lot of sunlight almost throughout the year. Next. The smart city in action, ease of living, you can see that these are the works which have happened in urban mobility. This is, I think, the streets of Pune, the pedestrian-friendly streets of Pune, vibrant public spaces, largely cities of Indore, Bhopal, Pune. These have been able to make a major shift in the way people conducted their lives. But as I told you, it's just about begun, and the challenge is that we do it in the fastest possible way because we are a nation in a hurry, because we were reluctant urbanizers to begin with. But the way things have picked up in India in the last 5 years, and as it looks ahead, as we look ahead, it seems that we would be able to make a big headway in terms of developing the smart cities in the another decade, and maybe in the first 5 years particularly. Affordable housing, I am also looking at affordable housing particularly. We have a very, very large program by the name of Housing for All, where we have a program where we would be making about 12 million houses, and you'll be happy to know that we have sanctioned almost 9.3 million houses already, of which about 3 million houses are complete. So the housing solution is where we are looking at assistance in a big way, particularly in technology transfer, because you have technologies where monolith panels, EPS technologies, there are nations which have been doing affordable housing for a very long time, particularly in the US, UK, and parts of Spain also, where this has been going on as a program for a very, very long time. So I think use of technology, and also in component industry, whether it is for plumbing, for electrical goods, for machines which need to, the house to manage for the water supply, etc., we would be needing help. Next. This is the integrated control and command center. This is how it looks like in our country, pretty much like what we've seen here today for the Shanghai one and the one in Seoul. But I think number of functions could be added as we go. Next. This is, India has a long heritage, so we will need to build in our programs in a manner that heritage is respected and done accordingly. Smart education, as I told you, is a very important part. Skill development. We will need a huge workforce to be able to address the needs of the Smart Cities program. Community engagement, urban spaces, and public art is one of the few things that we have taken up. Next. These are some of the snapshots of what we've done: waste to energy, solar plants, and this work is ongoing. This is a temple structure where solar is in use. Next. So this is all I had to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. And now, to complete the India-German partnership, may I please welcome Mr. Georg Hansen. He heads the GIZ's Sustainable Urban Development and Smart Cities program.
Thank you so much, Samia. And thank you so much, sir, for the very interesting presentation. You gave, I think, a very comprehensive overview of the Smart City mission in India. So good morning, everyone. What I would like to do now is that I want to give a short overview of sort of the work in the urban sector, in the urban development, under the Indo-German cooperation. Can we have the first slide, please? So in the video, in the beginning, you have seen that the Indo-German cooperation celebrated last year its 60th birthday. We are in the very nice situation that we have yearly government-to-government negotiations. So from these government negotiations, usually rough working fields are defined. And one of these working fields is the urban development, where India and Germany cooperate. And then within these working fields, GIZ, which is sort of a government-owned company in Germany, we implement then these projects on the ground along with the Indian partners. So the project that I'm representing today is called the Sustainable Urban Development in Smart Cities project. This project has started in 2018, and since then, we are sort of working on the national level with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, where also Sir is housed in this ministry. And then we are also working in 3 states in India, which is Tamil Nadu, Odisha, and Kerala. I'm very happy that today, like after I have spoken, we have 3 guests also from Kerala here, so very strong representatives from Kerala. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So, you have heard before that the Smart City mission from the Indian government has this area-based approach, which means in the cities, respective areas are being defined, and then all sort of the efforts are focusing on these areas. In this project, we also look at the full city and the region. So we also, for example, talk about regional planning. Next slide. And here you can already see what I just said. So we work along with the national ministry, then with the 3 states, and we also work in 3 cities, in 3 smart cities, Bhubaneswar, Kochi, and Coimbatore. Then our so-called verticals, our thematic areas, are governance and SDGs, housing and planning. So housing for all, for example, what we just heard, we support this also. And then, of course, basic services and infrastructure. And what you see here, the hands, you can do this on your own. It's called a mudra, which is sort of yoga for your fingers. So that's what we invented in order to explain the project. Next slide. Here you can see again our areas where the Indo-German cooperation is focusing its work. Next. We started the project with our partners with a very simple question. When you hear the term smart city, what is smart for you? When is a city smart? Because jointly we believe that there's a huge range of answers, and even experts will sort of disagree what is smart. And in the end, every city has to define this on its own, along with its citizens. So when we approached our partners with this question, we saw a lot of smiles, and we really had a good discussion coming out of this question. And to summarize this, the answers that we received can be grouped in 2 categories. One set of answers that was sort of universal. They popped up again and again. And one set of answers that was pretty individual. Next slide. So the individual answers were that the partner said, today the urban development in India is so dynamic, so fast, and so much growing into the landscape, so huge, that it's no longer possible to tackle urban issues with only one scale. So we need a multi-scale approach. We need to look over the frontiers, over the borders of our governance system. The city and the state level need to be linked, and so on. So, for example, a single master plan for a city in a scale of, let's say, 1:50,000 is no longer enough. We need to link this also with a regional scale, and so on, and with a local scale. Next. Next slide. No, one back. Yeah. So the second universal answer was that a lot of cities sort of self-critically said, well, today our departments are often working in isolation to each other. And this is not only an observation that you can do in India. I believe it's a worldwide trend that cities struggle with sort of fostering the discussion among their departments. So our partner said a smart city would sort of overcome this working in silos by bringing the departments together and by fostering the internal exchange of data and knowledge. Next. Next. Yeah. And then, the individual answers, they were, for example, around these topics. So smart city was considered as a city that offers good public spaces. Or Kochi, for example, Kerala said, a smart city for us is a city that takes care of its heritage. And then, of course, transport, mobility was an issue that was named very often. Water, digital governance, open data, and so on. Next slide. So we are working now in all these areas. We support in policy making. We support in making local bylaws. We do concrete projects, for example, like sewage projects, also in Kochi, for example. And I want to dive deep now in the next 3-4 minutes in one project that we did in Kochi, and this also leads then to the next discussion that we will have with our partners from Kochi, where we did a public participation event that was pretty special. Next slide, please. So, yeah, thank you. So this project in Kochi was called Ente Kochi. Ente is the local language, Malayalam, which means my Kochi, sort of my city, my Kochi. And there is a huge art festival in the city of Kochi, which is, I think, one of the biggest in Asia, if not the biggest. And this participation event was along with this art festival. So along with an urban planning company from Hamburg and, of course, the municipality of Kochi, this participation event was conducted. Next. Next. And you can see here that, the idea was to really invite the citizens of the city to join and enter the discourse with a lot of stakeholders from the city, with experts, and to sort of grasp ideas actively from the citizens. Next. 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 So you see that this was done in a really hands-on way. Kochi is a city that is located at the Arabian Sea with a lot of islands. And what we did, that we simply sort of produced these islands as a map that you can walk in. So this wooden model that you see is actually the city of Kochi. And the citizens that were invited could give their feedback directly on this model in a very easy and comprehensive way. Next slide. Yeah, so here you see again. And here you can see already these little wooden blocks with a color coding. They addressed specific challenges or issues that were sort of given as an entry point. So for example, I don't know, green might be mobility. And then the citizens could put specific ideas into these cards, or they could just place their ideas to a specific area, maybe to a neighborhood where they live, in order to give feedback. Next. So here you can see how citizens give feedback. Next. So this was then a so-called challenge, mobility in this case. Next. Next. Yeah, here you see also, these are all challenges, and the citizens could just directly write their ideas into these sort of kick-off questions, research questions. Next. Then, of course, there were also a lot of side events, exhibitions, hands-on discussions with experts. In this case, you see Mr. Ewald from Hamburg. He's a planner. So they have invented all these methods. Next. Next. Of course, everyone was addressed. It doesn't matter if you're old or young or disabled or not. So it was designed in a way that really, with a universal approach, that every citizen can sort of contribute to this. Next. Next. Yeah, I think I'm done. Maybe the next slides. So maybe we stop here one second. We also introduced here a digital tool, you know, the hands-on stuff you have seen now. And along with the partners in Kochi, we want to go beyond this. And we want to introduce also a tool called Cityscope, where sort of you have the city on a sort of an iPad device, which is huge, like a data table. So the idea is to have sort of the city under your fingertips. You can zoom in, you can zoom out, you can switch on and off layers. And this tool was also very successfully tested already at this event. Okay, I think I'm done with this. So now I'm looking forward to a great discussion, first with our partners from Kochi, and then with the other topics that we also have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hansen. So I think we've seen the India perspective, the national perspective. We've also seen the German perspective and the processes that they follow. And now I think I'm Now I think it's a great opportunity that we have three politicians from Kochi Municipal Corporation. We have Mrs. Anu, we have Mr. Harris, and we have Mr. Sabu. Yeah. Ma'am, can I invite you? Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah. So Miss Anu, she is the secretary of Kochi Municipal Corporation. She's a lawyer by profession, but she is dedicated herself into working for people. And we have Mr. Harris and Mr. Sabu. Both of them again are working very, very categorically only with slums and to work with slum eradication and to work with livelihood impact assessment and also to do something that can improve the life of people in Kochi. So I welcome all of you here. And we start with a small video, which is anti-Kochi video, which really kind of summarizes the presentation, at the same time the processes and the efforts that they've put in. I can't open this one. Second. Yeah. Huh? Video is not working. I think they are just. I will. Volume? Yeah.
Okay, there is no volume in the video.
No, there is.
I unplug this. It must sound from the speaker, but it doesn't work.
Okay, then the video. Okay, in that case, what we will do is that because they are working with people, they are representative of people, and they've really seen things from bottom up. So I think we'll just start with questioning and maybe open it to people to ask you what are the things that are the key challenges, what are the things that you think you've really gained out of this whole smart city process, and how people are communicating with you as politicians and you as an administrator, and generally as a Kochi municipal administration, how people and you all are doing something together.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to participate this session and sharing our experiences with all of you. Kochi is a fast developing city in Kerala and in India. It has more than 6 lakhs people are situated in Kochi. That is makes so many problems. The density of population is very higher than other cities in India. That makes so many problems, faces many challenges. And the Kochi people also likes to become smart, and they are very eager to become the smart city. But we face one of the main thing is that what is the people ask, what is the benefit of the smart city, and what kind of development which attributed by the smart city projects, and how the life of the people, which very easier to and very convenient, better than other people. But we cannot convince them the benefits of the smart city development. That is the one of the thing. Because the people aspire that the development which affects their lives, that means what they get from the smart city. That is the main thing the people ask. What are the physical benefits of the people? They are very eager to know about the physical benefits of the smart city. We can very well say that our present situation will improve, and our present situation will more convenient and more intelligent from the smart city movement. But their experience is they have no experience with the smart city projects, because as a politician, we are very difficult to convince them the development and other things. That is one of the main challenges we face. All of the cities face the similar, I think that all of the cities face the similar challenges in India, because people are very eager to know what is the benefit and what affect their day-to-day lives. Because most of the people struggle with their livelihoods, their jobs, their dwelling places, other living surroundings. That is, in that circumstance, they are not acceptable, the conditions or the dream projects, because it is a dream. They are very eager to know about the details of the thing. That is. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Maybe handing over to you. So now we sort of got an inside view of the normal Indian citizen, how he or she gets to know the smart city approach. I would like to know from you, what are the expectations from the politicians in the smart city idea, and how is this topic discussed within the local politics?
First of all, I would like to thank GIZ for extending an invitation to be here with you all. And the expectations of the politicians regarding the smart city. Of course, it all came as a part of the globalization. India too came out with smart cities, and luckily we were on the 5th rank, is it? We were on the fifth rank of the smart city. And of course, it is not a small thing that the projects are coming in with improving the roads, 24/7 water, slum eradication, housing, all these areas, we, the politicians or the public men or the people's representatives were really encouraged with such projects. But as Mr. Sabu addressed here, there are challenges on local levels. Even though these projects initially were discussed from a blank point, like nobody knew what is the project, then it was discussed what all we want, the areas we have discovered, these areas will be covered in this. This came from the grassroots itself. But at that time, people, they just participated and they came in with their suggestions. But when it really came, we are facing problems. Like when we go about the roads, for example, this is an example what I can say in Cochin. We don't have even people who are ready to take the contract of a big section of roads, like we were tendering, but there was nobody to. So that part, the people are a bit disappointed. And when we go into the slum areas, like with the project of sewerage, for example, there are a lot of objections from the public. They are not aware of what good is going to happen for them. So some don't want the sewerage plant to come in that area where the people are thickly populated areas of Mattanjeri. It's one of the biggest slums of Kerala. So this type of things are, is a challenge in front of us. But we are convincing them. We are having meetings. We are having local leadership to discuss with such people who have doubts on this. And things we feel that everything will be cleared in a right manner, and things will happen in a very good manner very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So now we got sort of an inside view from the local politics of the city of Kochi. And now I'm very happy that we also have a representative from the administrative wing of the city. Ms. Anu, you are working as a secretary in the municipality. And I would like to be interested in how far the smart city mission that's been going on already now for a couple of years, and how far this has changed the work of the administration of the city of Kochi, and also what are the expectations on that side?
Dignitaries, actually I represent Kochi Corporation from its administrative part. and we are the first city in state of Kerala to get the to be under the project of a smart city mission. So the challenges we face are discussed. Most of the challenges are discussed by both of them, and I have to add on two more things, that there are some political issues also there in making some problems and some issues in some taking decisions in the a strong decision in the part of the council. As you, I don't know, all of you are aware, in Kerala, it's the council is being the supreme authority, unlike the other part in India. Bureaucrats are placed under the council, and the council make the decision in. Actually, they are the supreme power in making decisions. So the cooperation from their part is very important in implementing when the implementation of the projects is coming. And yet another thing is that the climatic condition in Kerala is very it's very different from other parts of the country, and we are having a 6 months rain in a calendar year. So the water table is high in Kerala, so the sewerage and solid waste management treatment in projects in Kerala is suffering a lot. And we don't have any perfect model in India to convince those people. So public agitations are frequent in Kerala, and if these problems can be settled soon, we will be the, I hope, Kochi Municipal Corporation will be the most, the fastest city to be urbanized, and it will be the first smart city in India.
Thank you very much, ma'am, and sir, Mr. Harris and Mr. Sabu, thank you very much. And I think just to complement this, we have a German city. We have an elected mayor, Dr. Henning Schulz, from a German city called Gütersloh, which is about 100,000 people. Please. It's about 100,000 people, and it is on the almost at the eastern side of Germany. And I welcome you to share your experiences of smart city, how you did it, your digitization, public participation, and how you have sort of successfully done all of that. And please go ahead.
So I stay because
You can't see it. You have to.
but I can maybe wait. No, that works. That works.
It's right here.
No, I
You can't see it there.
think that works. Yeah. I stay here. So I hope you can understand me very well. Welcome to all of you, to the audience, and thanks for the GIZ for the invitation. Yeah, my name is Henning Schulz. I'm a mayor of a, compared to India, of course, very small size city. 100,000 inhabitants, that's nothing compared to India. For Germany, not so extraordinary. And I think it is interesting to talk about what we are doing on our way to become or be a smart city. It's always the perspective you look at the cities. And I want to tell you today on which way we are. And maybe we can learn something about that and even transfer it to India. So I stay here because normally my presentations are in German, and today it has to be in English, so I wrote down some keywords for me, and I hope we will manage this together. So what we do, or what we started more than 1 year ago, is a process. In German it is called digitaler Aufbruch. Aufbruch means movement, or I can translate it in digital dawn or digital awakening. Maybe that is what it means. and it means that we really want to work together with the citizens for the digital transformation of the whole city. And just generally, our view on digitalization is it is not a value, it is just a tool. It is a tool that we have to use for the people, for the living together of the people in our city. And we really want to focus and search out the practical use for the people in the city, because you know there are loads of companies and they want to sell loads of technical stuff. But the question is, where's the really use for the people? And what we started it is a dialogue process of several years. We are in there since more than 1 year, and it is really several stages, and the values of our process are based on the Leipzig Charter for the European cities, and on the strategy, on the smart city strategy of Germany, on the national strategy. So before I go on, I have to show you, of course, where my city is. You can see it there. Look, I have to go, yeah, okay. So there should be a map now from Germany. First it's too fast, I don't know. Yeah, that's the map of Germany, so you can see where our city is. Many people know where Berlin is. Now you can locate where our city is. So just some words to me. So I'm the mayor of the city since nearly 5 years. From my origin, I'm not born as a mayor. After school, I learned bricklayer, and after that, I studied architecture in Hanover and in London. And so I worked several years as an architect, and it was never in my dreams to become a mayor, but then it happened 5 years ago. So I bring in the knowledge of town planning, of architecture, of developing cities, and I think that fits quite good together with the task of digitization. But when I look to India, and we heard a lot and we saw a lot, to be honest, in our city, fresh air is no problem, fresh water is no problem. We have a well-organized waste management, and we have public buses. And when I look on the scale, on the problems of the large mega cities of the world, normally you could say, well, where's the problem in Gütersloh? Why are you talking about smart cities? You manage everything, you organized everything. But it focused out that the highest topic we discuss is participation. So I think connecting people means participation, and we are discussing this thing. And people ask me in the city, Mr. Mayor, why are you talking about digitalization? Because, you know, everybody has a phone in the pocket, and I mean, it takes place anyway. So where's the task to talk about this in your city? In Germany, it's like that. Each city, my city, so we are responsible for the whole territory. We take the decisions in our place. It's not Berlin. Okay, they have the overall rules and topics, but the responsibility in Germany really belongs to your own city. So I say, when digitalization is coming, and there are companies and they want to put their sensors on traffic lights, on streetening lights, it collects data. And we come to the question, who owns the data? And who is allowed to put these sensors on my traffic lights? So it comes to a decision which has to take the council, which has to be discussed by the citizens, because it's their life, they want to live in the city. And they have to create the reality where they want to live in, and it's the decision of my city council and not of the companies. So that's a task where I think smart city is maybe discussed on different levels on each country than in each societies. But that's the question in my city. And then there was something some years ago, we invented a platform for e-government, for government stuff. And we noticed that most of the people in my city, they didn't use it. They said, we are afraid of putting the data in there, we don't trust, we don't believe in that. And that makes me clear that first, we have to discuss with the citizens. First, we have to work on I call it the click in your head. You have to change the mind of the people. You have to you have to work for acceptance in your society. Otherwise, you can't successfully put in technology. It doesn't work simply. So the slides are not so important, but I go on. Yeah, some words to my city, of course. I told you, small city, 100,000 inhabitants, but I would say a quite rich city in Germany. We have more than 5,000 small and medium-sized companies, most of the time family-run, and the most famous one is the company of Miele. Maybe it is known even in India. They produce premium washing machines, and most of some people all over the world, they even buy it, and they come from my city. So, yeah, I spoke about the values, and well, we have a lot of producing, production, manufacturing companies, and for them, for example, it's really important to understand that digitization does not mean to have an internet website. It means to think about how you can create values by changing your processes, by selling other stuff. And so I really want to push in the influence, and I want them to think about. But now I'll tell you how we do the participation process. It's a small diagram. So you see on the left side the city society. Our whole process is completely open. It's completely public. And normally, when you start a process and finally we want to come to a digital strategy for our city, you go to PwC, for example, and you ask, can you write me something in an agenda? But what we think is, we believe in the citizens. And what we did an open call and we asked for city experts. So we created think tanks, you see 5 in the middle of the diagram, and we asked for at least 10 city experts who could discuss over 2 years their ideas, their point of view, and we got excellent people. And there came people we haven't seen before. You know, you have different sorts of discussions for building, planning, and so on, and sometimes you even know the people, they are coming. You see them all over the city, but now we really got new people discussing and working on our agenda. And they do this since 1 year, and they will do this for another year. And in the end, they have to come up with ideas. And I just have some slides how this works. So we have 10 city experts, and we have 2 other people who just guide the group. And nearly every 2 months they are sitting together, and then, well, they start with an overall view. They start on a strategy level, but they come even closer and closer to really projects for our city, for projects that bring participation in the city. Some people ask me, well, Mr. Mayor, why are you doing that? Why have you implemented this process? And well, I can only say I feel really responsible for the future of my city. I feel responsible that people think about what digitization will change in their life, and I feel responsible for the city council to tell the councillors what is their responsibility. And I think we shouldn't accept everything which comes from all over the world, from Google, from Apple, from Facebook, and so on. I think we have to make the laws, we have to set the borders where we say, well, that's left or right. That's not our life anymore in our city. And something special, there's a picture from the young people in our city. We made an extra open call, and we asked for the young people, the under 30s in our city. We call them in German Morgenmacher, which I can translate makers of tomorrow, morning makers, whatever. Why is it like that? The population in Germany is quite old. It's a tree like that. You know, many old people, not so many young people. So in the political process, when we have elections, the older ones, they have the power. The younger ones, they have the future. they need the future for their life. And what we do is we have a silver plate, and we lift the silver plate, and we put on the silver plate the young people, the makers of the morning, and we make them visible. So it's kind of an advisory board for our council, driven by the young people. And we know the young people, they are active. They want to shape the future. They want to discuss their future. And I say, the things we discuss today, the things we decide in our city will form the future in the last 5 or 10 years. So the young people, they have to have a special silver plate to be visible. And that's really successful. So we found the first 25 in the last month. They discussed together and they are very active. But they want to be in an informal organization. They want to be put in a fixed organization by us, by the administration. They want to be open. They want to be free. But they want to give us their advice. Yeah, that was something from the campaign. So we called it Love Your City, Become a Morgenmacher, Love Gütersloh. Yeah, and then finally we are doing a special format in our theater, because cultural change means the right place to discuss this is a theater. The theater was always in the past the place to reflect the future, to reflect that what is our daily life, sometimes on an artistic way. So every year we filled up our theater, and I'm a bit proud of this, because it's not such a big city and it was overfilled by more than 600 people. We just had it 3 weeks ago. And it's a kind of edutainment format. So some people you can activate really to work for 2 years. But the others you can activate to come every year into the theater. And we have a mixture of very good keynotes, of art statistics, of provocation, of information. And what I want to do is I want to make the people to think about on the next day when they sit on a breakfast table, and to think about what digitization means in their life. So finally, I want to show you one project we are already finished. In Germany, in general, in our city, in Gütersloh, we have more than 500 associations and groups, and volunteering is very, very deep anchored in a city and anchored in Germany. The problem with these organizations and associations is they become older and older when you look on the age of the members. So they are shrinking. And the problem is we have young people and they are really, really active, but they don't want to fit in these associations. They don't want to be in these dense groups, but they are active. They want to help. They want to be in this. And we created an app. It's called VoluMap, Volunteering Map. And the idea came from the year 2015, when many refugees came to Germany. And when more than 1 million refugees came to our country, we had the problem that on one side we have the perfectly organized groups, the administrations, like the Red Cross, for example. So you can organize these groups because the people know each other. You can do WhatsApp groups, whatever. But then, on the other hand, on the train stations, for example, you had many people. You had citizens from the city, hundreds, and they wanted to help. But you didn't know how to organize, how to do that. So we came to the idea to create an app which brings together the organized people and those who want to bring in their energy and their power into projects. So it's a geographical reference app where you can just, for example, say, give me all events where I can be in a distance from 1 kilometer from my position. And you will get a push mail, and maybe it's just a simple thing like you have to help an older people, or you helped at a sporting event, for example. And so I have some screenshots from this. And so our groups, our administrative groups, they are really fascinated by this, because they have the idea that on a first step, you can reach the young people, you can reach the people who are interested maybe to help only one Saturday morning, but not until the rest of your life. And yeah, maybe they like to cut trees or do greenery works, but they don't want to be in a fixed organization until the end of their life. So we are quite successful with this, and this is just only one idea, one small project. We have many of these which subsumize under the topic participation. So our goals and our ideas of smart city is in general the horizontal overall view on all ideas of the city with the main topic of participation, and we want to do this together with our citizens, and we believe in the power of the experts, and finally our city council has to decide and of course have to give money for it to bring it into the life. Thank you very much for your audience.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schulz. Thank you very much. I think it was a very insightful presentation, but I'd like the audience to keep your questions for now, and we have a next panel discussion, and then we invite Mr. Schulz again, and then we have questions for you. Yeah? Yeah. Yes. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, ma'am. I think now we have, as you know, our session has two key themes that we are following. One is the inclusive and sharing cities, and one is the urban environment. So we start our first panel discussion and speakers for the first session, which is on the inclusive and sharing cities. And I'm pleased to invite Mr. Pedro Ortiz. Mr. Pedro Ortiz is an international expert on metropolitan management and planning for every government organization and international organization that you can name for. I welcome Mr. Ortiz. Thank you very much.
You manage that, or I manage it? Well, we have very little time, so I'm going to be very quick, and I'm going to focus on 4 points, which are, first, metropolitan areas is a completely new species that never existed before in the history of humankind, and we have to learn how to manage it, and it's a different way of participation as in a city structure. Second, the governance. The governance of metropolis is not like the governance of cities. It's more like the governance of nations. So we have to think of metropolises as nations, and that's a different approach. What is important in a metropolis is not the hardware of the metropolis. It's not the houses, the streets, the roads, or the buildings. It is the software of the metropolis. And the software of the metropolis is us. The logiciel, as the French will say, is the people. And the people have 2 elements, which is human resources and social resources. And the social resources is what we call collective intelligence. So that is the real value of the metropolis. And then we have many techniques to include and to incorporate participation, but let's not forget that those tools are the means and not the objectives of that participation. And let's not lose the idea of that the objective is that collective intelligence, which is defined by collective intelligence is the capacity of a group to make the right decision within a reasonable span of time. And those are the 4 themes that I'm going to talk, but let's go on. The first slide, as you saw, was the metropolitan structure of India. Every yellow dot is 1 million inhabitants, and you see there the structure of the main metropolis of India. Next. As you know, the world is urbanizing very quickly. India, 50,000 people are moving to cities every day. 50,000 people every day. So every week India has to build a metropolis, or every 2 weeks, is a huge impact. No? Next. And metropolis is a new dimension, is a new scale. You have Mr. Mayor, you are an architect, you understand scales, no? So we have architecture, urban design, urban planning, metropolitan planning, national development, regional, continental, and so on. And metropolitan is a new scale. In the history of the world, there has only been 3 cities which were more than 1 million inhabitants, and now we have 500. From 3 to 500 in 70 years. It's a completely new phenomenon, and we have to react to that. Now, previous. 500 cities, metropolis with 1 million inhabitants, you will grow, Mr. Mayor, you will grow to 1 million. And those 500 metropolis produce 75% of the GDP of the world. So imagine, the world is built by metropolis, and the countries whose metropolis do not work, that country doesn't work. In Manila, for instance, is 70% of the GDP of the Philippines is Manila. If Manila doesn't work, and it doesn't work, the Philippines do not work. So really the future is the position of the metropolis in the world, and that will position. And that is extremely important for India. If metropolitan India does not work, India will not work and will not have the position it deserves in the world. Next. So when you have a city, you have the size, but when you have a worm, which is not anymore 15 centimeters long, is 1.5 meters, is not anymore a worm, is a snake. And if you pretend to deal with a snake the way you deal with a worm, you are going to be in trouble. So that's why we have to change our frame of mind and to think about metropolis in a completely different way. Next. Not even a bunch of worms is a snake. So a bunch of small cities all together creating a metropolis is not a snake. So we really have to think in a different way, and that is absolutely necessary. Next. For instance, the way you govern a city, you have an orbital or pyramidal structure. You have the mayor, and then you have the deputy mayors, and then you have the chief of departments, and then you have the departments, and then the services and the population. You have a pyramidal structure or an orbital one, and that is called a unitary system. I will come back to that. In a metropolis, no. Every institution which is involved in the metropolis, the many mayors, in Madrid, I was in charge of Madrid, 180 mayors. Everyone has his own competences, and you cannot tell a mayor what he should do in his competence. He will do what he thinks. But then you have transports, water, electricity, power, and so on and so on. Every institution has their own competences in a democratic and even in a non-democratic situation, and you cannot impose your will on all of them. So it is a matrix of dialogue between all those institutions, as transparent as possible, in such a way that the third parties can know what the decisions have been made and act upon those decisions. So it's a completely different way of managing, of governing a metropolis than a city. Next. That approach has already been taken by the IDB, the Inter-American Development Bank, and this is a Twitter, and these are publications of the IDB. So this is already taking shape in official positioning of international development agencies like World Bank and the United Nations and so on. Next. No, previous. So the way you participate is completely different again. In a city with the pyramidal orbital is the bottom-up, top-down. The mayor has to inform the population, the mayor has to listen to the population, and together to make a decision. In a metropolis, no, it's a peer dialogue. It's a peer dialogue. And in each of the institutions which are involved in the metropolis, they have their own participation process. No, the municipalities have their own, the powers agency, the different secretariats of the states or the ministries, the health ministry, the transport ministry, each of them have their own needs of participation, but the metropolis is more a peer dialogue than a top-down, bottom-up. So it's a completely different way of participating. Next. No. No. Is that one previous? So the different, look, the way in government structures, no, in politology, no, the way you manage a city is what is called a unitary system. The way you manage a metropolis is called a confederation. And those are two different ways of managing, of government structures. We will come back to that later on, but keep in mind, unitary, confederation, and the third system is a federal system. Next. And the way you plan, we are getting to into professional areas. No, the way you plan a city is with a regulatory plan where you deal the private and the public dialogue. What can you do in each of your plots and so on? And the way you manage and you plan a metropolis is by strategic and structural planning. which is different, and we have no time to get into this. As we have no time to discussion, I will be later on in the India pavilion, and I will be very happy to interact and to dialogue with about all these elements as far as you want. Next. So this is the components of a metropolis. You have the economy, you have the sociology, you have the physical, the territory, the planning, and you have the governance. And those four components, when you plan all of them together in a dialogue, that is a strategic planning. But when you are only planning the physical dimension, it's a structural planning. And we will come back to that later on. Next. We are doing something around the world which is called brain shops, metropolitan brain shops instead of workshops. We are putting together 50 of the decision makers of that metropolis together for a week, and they decide first, next. They decide first what is the future of that metropolis, what that metropolis wants to do. In Mumbai decided that it wants to be the capital of the Indian Ocean. So Mumbai has to be the capital from Cape Town to Ho Chi Minh City. And then the second day, to be that, what do you have to do? And obviously Mumbai is doing now an airport under the sea, because it's at sea level, and the sea is going to raise 2 meters, 3 meters by the end of the century. So obviously that airport is insufficient, and they have to think. And then all the other elements that with a big airport of 6 runways, 150 million passengers, because if not, you will never be the capital of the Indian Ocean, how that affects the metropolis and what other projects you have to develop, and then you develop those projects. This is a kind of strategic plan in 1 week, very quick, with the 50 guys that make decisions, are empowered. And we are doing that with the European Union and in India, and we have done that in Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Chennai, Pune, Delhi, and so on and so on. And that helps to program the metropolis for the long term. Next. Metropolises are extremely powerful. Now, for instance, when I say that in Argentina, they told me, if you say that again, we will not invite you anymore, because Argentina is equals to Dallas. The economic power of Dallas is Argentina. The economic power of Madrid is equivalent to Peru. The economic power of Paris is 3 times Colombia. Bolivia is equal to White Plains. Who has heard about White Plains? No? It's a city of 50,000 inhabitants north of New York. No? So metropolises are really the power sources of the world, and they are extremely powerful. Next. And if you put metropolis among nations, you will see that the nation number 14 will be Tokyo, 15 will be New York, 20 Los Angeles, Chicago, London, and so on. And you see Mumbai is 76, is equivalent, the GDP of Mumbai is equivalent to the GDP of Pakistan, and the GDP of New Delhi is equivalent to the GDP of Beijing, no? But India is number 9, and India should be number 3, 2, or 1 by the size of the city and the capacity, the size of the country and the capacity of the country. So really, if those metropolises of India move to the second column, India will move to the upper layers of India. It's no point India with 1.4 billion people having the capacity of Italy or Russia. India must be really on the second or third or first level. Next. There are 3 types of countries. The ones where the metropolis is 60% of the GDP of the country, and in those metropolises, the central power will never allow those metropolises to have local power. Because then the mayor of the metropolis, if it runs 70% of the GDP of the country, will say to the president, go home, because I am the one who runs the country. So in those countries, red flags, there will be no political power. On the contrary, in the countries that have metropolis which are only 5%, Germany, 5%, Stuttgart, Frankfurt, so on 6%, there is no problem for those metropolises to have the capacity to organize themselves with political power. And as a matter of fact, in Germany, 3 states are metropolitan states. No? Bremen, Berlin, and Hamburg are metropolitan states. So you see the difference. No? And those metropolises really need to organize themselves. And to prove that is that one of the metropolises which is shown as an example of good organization is Singapore. Why? Because it's a metropolitan state, it's a nation. They are able to organize not only transport and housing and so on, they are as well able to organize health and taxes and education and so on. So really the metropolis to work and to be able to compete needs to have that capacity of organization. And so we have these three layers, but India is on the layer of the green lights. India can organize a metropolis together with the states, with Maharashtra, with Tamil Nadu, and so on. They have the capacity to organize those metropolises. So we are in the good position. Next. Next. There are only three ways of organizing countries. I told you that metropolises are not cities, they are countries. There are only three ways of. For 3,000 years, we have been trying to organize countries, and there is only three ways: the confederation, the federation, and the unitary system. And at the long term, the confederations do not work. The Hanseatic League was a confederation, and it worked for 400 years, but not in the long term. 400 years is not the long term for a country. No? The Greeks, the European Union is a confederation, and we know the problems that we are having as a confederation, the European Union. So confederations do not work. Metropolis cannot work as a bunch of worms, cannot be a confederation. They have to have some homogeneous power to make the decisions they need. Next. So, confederation, a confederal system of municipalities doesn't work, and a unitary system that everything is decided in central government, health and roads, and then they put the hospital here and the road there, neither. So the metropolis have to be governed either by a federal system or by a decentralized system. We have no time to go into all that, but if you want to discuss that, I will be at the Indian Pavilion. Next. And the only difference between the federal system and the decentralized is who the president of the metropolis is accountable for. In a federal system, he's accountable for the population. In a decentralized one, he's accountable to the president of the nation. Next. The role of India in the world is going to be extremely important. In the next century, out of the 6 main cultures of the world, we have the 3 ones that really have 1.4 billion people, which is China, the Western civilization, and India. And Chinese philosophy is a philosophy of, you are saying yes because I have to finish? No, all right. The Chinese philosophy is a philosophy of predestination. Lao Tse, the Tao Te Ching, Confucius. The group is more important than the individual. The Western philosophy is a culture of the future is not predetermined. We build the future by our effort, and so is the individual that transforms society. That dichotomy between the two cultures, the Indians are in the middle, and the Indians with Krishna, Arjuna in the Mahabharata and the Gita Krishna tells Arjuna, the future is predetermined, but if you are intelligent and wishful enough, you can change that future. So India is in between the two cultures and really has a huge role to play in balancing that next century of development in the world. Next. The rule of thumb, and we have no time to get into financing. The rule of thumb is that local authorities should have 12% of the GDP of the country, multiplied by the GDP per capita, multiplied by the number of people that lives in that city. So, Mr. Mayor, we can discuss afterwards if you have the right number of, and that this rule of thumb worldwide, and check worldwide, does not work in India. India cities have no money at all. Not only as a final, an American city that we know that America thinks that government should not exist and government should be as limited as possible. An American city has $14,000 per person per year, and an Indian city has $2 per person per year. So what can you do with $2 per year compared with what can do as a city with $14,000 per head per year? So really, the finance of India in cities has to be revised, and that is a federal, national issue. Next. Yeah. Collective intelligence. Collective intelligence is the capacity of a group to make the right decision within a reasonable span of time. Next. And as I mentioned, the social component in a metropolis is based in... Sorry, I am getting a flu. The social component of a metropolis is composed of two elements: the human resources and the social resources. The human resources is what we all know. Two engineers equals 2. But the social resources is that capacity of those 2 engineers to work together. Instead of producing 1 + 1, 2, is to produce 2.5. So there are countries, I'm not going to mention them, that they have social resources of 2.5, countries that have social resources of 1.5, and countries that have social resources of 0.5. No? So really that is the collective intelligence. And the collective intelligence, which is now under research around the world, and there are universities which are working on that, you have ways of promoting, and it has 3 stages. First one is cognition, second one is coordination, third one is cooperation. And we are working on that, and some of the work that GIZ is doing in Bhubaneswar is related to this kind of approach. No? So remember that, because we are going to see on how to participate with that kind of approach. It's very simple. Imagine the mayors of a metropolis getting together. First they tell each other what they are doing. That is cognition. The second one is copying each other. That is coordination. And the last one is doing things together, which is cooperation. That is the building up of collective intelligence in a metropolis. Next. And this is already work that GIZ is working on. You have the way of participating in a city, in a metropolis, is by informing, by consulting, by involving, by collaborating, and by empowering. No? And next, this is already, next. Oh. Well, GIZ is working in Bhubaneswar, the red circle, which is a very strategic city in India, because as you see, the red areas are the big population in India, and the light green is the low-income areas of India. So really the low-income areas are along the Ganges Valley and along the Bengala Gulf Coast, and GIZ has selected to collaborate with Bhubaneswar, which is in one of those strategic need areas of India. Next. Previous. So this is things that are being done in public collaboration, participation in Bhubaneswar, and I'm going to focus on the lower line, which is next. And as it is difficult to read here, I have copied that to inform print media. These are smart cities approach. These are techniques. These are technical technologies to use in that kind of public participation. And you see how that works in each one of those areas of development. Next. But as a matter of fact, we should not forget that these are just techniques. We must realize what is behind that. And the 2 first ones, inform and consult, as a matter of fact, is the top-down, bottom-up approach that we all know from cities. And the other 3 involve, collaborate, and empower. It corresponds to collective intelligence, which is cognition, which is involved, collaboration, which is the cooperation, and empower, which is the coordination. Sorry, coordination and cooperation. So really, we are not this kind of piecemeal approach of a list of things. We must have realized that there is a structure behind, and that we have to work within that structure. And there is nothing new to that, but it's consistent and it's effective. Next. I'm finishing. Let's not forget that all those techniques, at the end is the tools of writing. But the tools of writing is not the objective of writing. The objective of writing is making literature, is writing Hamlet. So let's not forget that those efforts that we are making in smart cities participation and so on, let's not forget that they are only tools, that we have an objective which is behind. Let's not miss the point by concentrating on that. Next. And there has been many smart approaches in the world through history. No? You had the agora in the Greek city that people discuss the future of the city. You have the Paschino in Rome during the 18th century that people posted their criticism of the politics and built the social consciousness of the politics. You have the Danzibao. You have the in Latin, in Mediterranean cities, people talking on the square and changing the mayor by criticizing or not criticizing. So all these were as well communication and participation related to the technology of the time. Next. So my point, let's not forget that we are dealing with categories, which is the objective, and with anecdotes, as Aristotle used to say, the final one. And let's not forget that if you have problems of communication with your partner, final one, is not by buying a smartphone that you are going to solve them. So you really have not to be smart that in Spanish, the ones who speak Spanish, translate by listo or listillo, which has a double meaning, and does not translate by inteligente, which is a completely different thing. So let's be intelligent rather than smart. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for this insightful presentation. And I think he's made himself available at the India Pavilion. Anybody who wants to go, please meet him at the India Pavilion. I think after the show, yes. Now I welcome Professor Veena Galera. Veena Galera comes from an academia, and she has been working on planning and urban design and urban planning issue in India for almost 35 years. And since 2001, she's been involved with the Delhi Development Plan, which is one of the most critical and most challenging city in the whole country. So I welcome Professor Galera.
Welcome, everybody. I hope I'll try my best to make it as concise as possible, to make it reachable to you, and to make it interesting at the same time. As an academia, usually you like to structure your work around some areas and regions. So I've done that too. So hopefully you'll be able to relate to the topic at hand, which is citizen participation, around that, those phases of thoughts that I had provided under the. But before I come on to the citizen participation and the tools that make it happen, I want to talk about the broad backdrop and the humongous problems that we as a nation are going to face. The reason being, I'll give you some statistics and facts about it. We are 32% urban, but we have 8,000 plus cities in the country. 8,000 plus cities, out of which 46 are million plus, which are metropolitans, as Pedro just talked about. There are 46 of those, and there are 3 mega cities which are 10 million plus. That's a huge agenda to tackle as far as smart cities are concerned. And no matter how much we try, it will take us stages of growth and stages of conversion and transformation to reach the end stage of what we wish to achieve. Well, the second point that I do want to make is about the Human Development Index that the UN has specified. And according to that, it has taken education, it has taken health, and it has taken per capita income, or per capita income of the GDP. And according to that, the figure says that we rate pretty low in the Human Development Index. Out of 184 cities, we are 129th in the rank. This ranking is done between 0 to 1, 0 meaning very low in the human development, 1 is very high. Norway has been the first one, having achieved 0.9. The Norway, Switzerland or Australia rank in the first top 3. Niger is 0.3, and we are somewhere medium, which is 0.6. So 0.9, 0.6 and 0.3 give you the range of the Human Development Index that is available to the world. This is what the UN has done. As far as the World Bank goes, the poverty studies that they have done, the Human Development Index was just released September 19, and the poverty studies are based on 18, and they usually take $1.9 per capita per day as the index, but poverty is very large. The total numbers of the poor in the world are something like 730 million, out of which half of them, 370 million, happen to belong to 5 countries only. India happens to be one of them. It's a huge, that's why I said it's a humongous problem to first solve the poverty problem and then to come on to the development agenda. And for that, I think out of the 375, which is 50%, 35% is in India. So that's a lot of problem. And I've been working in this area for a very long time. I've worked with slums, I've worked in the poverty sector, I've worked in a large number of the informal sector. I did a whole census of the city of Delhi for the informal sector as part of the study for the second master plan. And that gave me a lot of insight as to how deep the poverty was and what can be done to negate it or to get it out. Because the 2030, they say, is going to be zero poverty for all these countries. And it's going to be less than 3%. And India has said that by 2030, we will make it 0%. And now if you have 130 million people who are poor in the country, imagine having a 1 million city, a city of a 1 million size, you need 130 such cities to accommodate the poor. So I'm just talking about the magnitude of the problem that we first have to solve before we come on. Now, why we think that smart cities is important for us, for this agenda of negating or alleviating poverty. I found that ICT impacts, there are lots of ICT impacts, and I did some studies and research on it, and ICT adoption in most of the countries has led to jobs, led to more jobs, led to more income, and a growth in the city GDP. The diffusion of ICT amongst the sectors has impacted the ICT industry. The institutional responses, if agreed to in the ICT, lead to transformation of ICT practices and sustained economic growth. So we need sustained economic growth. This is not coming there. I'll come to the presentation later. But the innovations and skills that emerge into the ICT, I have seen the ironsmith who works in my house. He has a smart TV, smart mobile, smart thing, but he doesn't know how to convert it into an app. He's got tremendous skill and knowledge. But all that he does, he entertains himself with a TikTok and all those entertaining things. But if he was given e-learning and ICT skills, he could manage his business so well, he could manage his investment so well, and he could do lots of things just through e-learning and through ICT exposure. So it becomes a bottom-up approach where literacy is good, where education is high, and where the will to transform is very high. So we have to tackle the principle of education. That becomes the key and the core area for which to look up. And we need it very strongly in these 3 areas. We need it in the government tech, which is very slow. It's happening, but it's still very slow. Updating of information, the dashboards are not there. It's not a two-way process of interaction. The property tech, which is our field, a town planner's field, the spatial. If I have a child who wants to go to a child care, has to be sent, I need the digital device to tell me in the city where I am located how to do it. So those devices are very important as far as the spatial tech is concerned, the property tech. And the last is the civic tech, which we need to empower the disempowered. And I call them the vulnerable group versus the other group. So we look at all these, and in my estimate, this is just the backdrop to what I want to say. In my estimate, in the policy domain becomes a very important one. The policy change has to take place in certain areas, and this change is required I've called them A, B, C, D, E, well, 5 areas. The citizen has to be at the center, and the bottom-up planning only will then take place. The data analytics has to be very sound and secure and privacy ensured, and it has to be a two-way thing. The labor market is what is going to create the GDP for the country. The labor market, its mobility, and the housing link. That has to be done for especially the vulnerable groups, the informal sector and the poor. That is very crucial. As far as the governance, owning the tech responsibility, and whether you use big data, the IoT and the AI, that becomes a big responsibility of the government to maintain the due diligence in that area. And of course, e-learning, fund creation, women, and jobs, and financial security. To me, these areas appear to be critical for citizens to participate in a healthy way in a two-way democratic functioning of all of us. Now I can come on straight to the... We've talked about the uses of social... I've done a study of some of the smart cities. We did 8 of those, which are 3 of them which are the GIZ cities, and 8 of them. And frankly, I tell you, it was the conventional methods. 42 conventional methods were used for citizen participation, only 19 for the digital participation. We listed all of them down, and we saw that Pune was the one which used most of the digital tools. It was 12 tools. The rest figured between 4, 5, 8, 10, 7. So the cities are responding differently to the digital tools in terms of citizen participation. Most of them are still using conventional tools, and some of those conventional tools that we have over here, of course, the license tools, these are the digital tools. We come on to the next one. Well, these we said was for the cities. These are 4 cities in one slide, and we've given the number of people, the percentage of people who were engaged in that, and the kind of, the green shows that these participated in the, as we said, those 5 stages that Pedro had just said, ICICE, I call it. Inform, consult, well, whatever. The C is collaborate and then empower. So collaboration and empowerment is not taking place, which is really the crucial and critical factor. It's happening in the first 3 domains. Did you show that slide where that's shown? No? So that shows the 2-way and the 1-way thing. So this is what we have for the red underlined ones are the digital tools, and the unlined ones are the conventional tools. So you see that the collaboration and empowerment is still to happen, and we need much more energy and sort of envisioning into that part of the things. So the next one. Now this is a total picture in which I said 42 different tools, which were conventional tools, have been used, and 19 over there. And we find that Pune has been using the maximum. I have all those figures. I don't want to bore you with the figures, but the fact is that these have been used successfully. But it's still the conventional tools. That's because our people are not so... we have a very high internet user. we have a very large smart mobiles, people with smart mobiles, but for using them for job creation, for investments, for venture capital. I learned that Telangana was the only state which has a T-hub, which has a very, very progressive domain in the digital technology, and then they're going ahead very fast. These are some of the things that we did with the GIZ partner cities, and this is what we concluded, that the consultation workshops, they selected, in the third phase, they selected mostly a select number of people. You need to have more, and that can only be done through two-way web portals and interactive devices. And we need lots to do in the e-learning domain. I think we need to establish as many centers in a city as possible to create the e-learning platform for everybody. And it's not a very, I won't say it's an impossible task. It is possible. It is possible because people know that this is where they are going to benefit personally. And it's not just getting water supply or getting a house or getting something free. It's something which knowledge gives you. And in my estimate, it is research, it is knowledge, in between is the technology, and then the business and the investment. And I learned something very interesting yesterday also about generating funds, your social innovation fund that you need. Somebody has tried it, and he calls it E-rate. So you put that E-rate, we have one example of the Energy Efficiency Services Limited. They give all the municipalities LED lights, and then what comes, they don't charge anything for it initially, but it comes as a the result is that you get less energy consumption, and you put it into the, that is their payment. And so E-rate is something like that you charge it. We used to have a cess tax. It used to be given somewhere in one of the, so you put that E-rate somewhere, a very small sum, and then you can collect it out of your water bills, your gas bills, your energy bills and all that. And that can help to do the e-learning process very quickly. It's a social innovation fund, and it can help a lot of people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I think, again, if you want to meet ma'am, she's at the India Pavilion. She can be reached there. And, yeah. Okay, now I think is the time for the next theme of our expo, which is about urban environment. And I'm pleased to invite Dr. Dieter Mutz. Dieter Mutz is the international expert on wastewater management infrastructure, and his main expertise is to really convert research into active projects and how everything can be implemented. So I welcome you. This one?
Good afternoon, everybody. I will talk to a very basic topic, which is waste management. When I go around here, I look at the different stalls. When I listen to different presentations, I feel if you digitalize your city will become clean as well. But when you understand that cleaning a city, digitalization might help, but you still need people in order to clean up your city. And I think we all agree when we talk about smart city means, among others, also a clean city. I will talk briefly about my experience while working for 5 years in India and the experience while working 20 years in Europe, in Germany and Switzerland mainly. What is the difference? What can we learn from each other, and what are joint solutions? When you look at India, when you look at Europe, we have joint objectives. And the joint objective is that we want to establish an integrated, closed cycle and low carbon waste management system. There is no harm. This is the objective the Indians have. This is the objective we have in the European Union, and what we have also in other parts of the world. That means we want to respect the waste hierarchy, we want to make sure that we implement activities which contribute to climate change mitigation. We want to recycle as much as possible and slowly move from sole recycling also to a closed loop economy, to a circular economy. We want to promote waste to energy in order to make also use from the thermal options of waste we have. And finally, which is very important, I will come back to that one a little bit later, but it's also not so irrelevant in Europe when we say we want to safeguard employment in the waste management sector. We talked about urbanization. All my speakers before talked about urbanization. And of course, we know there's a big urbanization, mainly in Africa and also in Asia, and especially also in India. We have in India almost nowadays 60 plus cities with more than 1 million inhabitants. And from investigations we did in Germany, we realized, and this is no big surprise, as higher the density in the city, as more waste is produced. And what does it mean for India? When you have such big cities, and you have cities like Mumbai, you have cities like Delhi with 20 million inhabitants, you have cities like Chennai, Bangalore, Bhubaneswar, etc., with almost 8 to 10 million inhabitants. That means you have a tremendous density in those cities, and you have a tremendous amount of waste which will be accumulated in those cities. And to manage waste management in one of those 50 plus million cities is comparatively a challenge. It's much more difficult to manage waste management in a city like in Delhi or in Mumbai compared to a city like Berlin or London or Madrid or Barcelona. And this, what does it mean? We have to understand where do we stand at the moment with our waste management system. There are different phases of waste management, historical phases of waste management. Of course, we all aim, and whenever I go to a conference, we always talk about zero waste society, circular economy society, no waste at all. But when you look at the reality, where do we stand at the moment, and when you look at different Indian cities, you still feel some of the Indian cities just introduced a basic waste management collection system in order to keep the city clean, in order to avoid diseases, health aspects, etc. And then some of them are moving already a little bit further down. Some are introducing already a separate collection system at the households, and further, which is also high on the discussion in the moment in India, is the entire question of waste to energy. But this is still the exception, and we are in India very often on the level 2 to 3, whereas in Europe we aim at least to go to phase 5, whereas it's still a dream, it's far away from reality. Oops, sorry. Recycling. We claim in Europe, especially in Germany, that we recycle as much as possible, but we also know what does it really mean. Is it a real recycling? Is it a material recycling? Is it upcycling, downcycling, whatever it is? Separate collection in Germany is already called recycling, despite the fact that we do not really know what is it, how is it recycling, what is the real percentage of secondary raw materials going back into the loop. A big question mark, but when you look at India, India has a well-organized recycling system, but this is 90% or even 95% informal organized. Even waste collection is often done in many cities, part of the informal sector, and this is a really big challenge. When you look here on the photos on the right side, this is a recycler dismantling electronic waste, and he just takes out the most valuable parts of that, very often only copper, and the rest is just discharged and just thrown away in an unorganized manner. We also have to understand that waste management and recycling contributes to CO2 emission reduction, especially when we look at certain metals, when we all know it about steel, aluminum, but also paper and glass. Secondary raw materials have a significant impact on the carbon footprint of a society. Climate change. We introduced in Europe a ban for dumping waste on landfills, and this contributed substantially to a reduction of CO2 emissions, especially methane emissions from landfill site. We also started to recycle more and to recycle better. At the end, we really came down with our CO2 emission footprint substantially. When you go to India, we are far away from such kind of controlled, organized waste disposal, waste handling systems. And I come back to that one a little bit later. But what is important that when we talk about climate change, we have to understand that India will heavily be affected by the climate change. And especially cities like Mumbai, which is lying close on several islands, close to the ocean, any kind of increase of the sea level will substantially impact the living conditions of the people in Mumbai, and so far we do not really know how to react in a city like Mumbai, but it's also Chennai and others, when we have a continuous impact on climate change, and I'm sure Mumbai is not prepared at all to resist this kind of changes, which we will face in the next couple of years. Now comes the challenge. The photo you see here is the landfill Ghazipur in Delhi. You find informal sector people sorting out valuable materials. You see in the backside part of the city of Delhi, and you can imagine that this kind of landfill with 1,000 of tons of waste every day disposed has a lot of emission of CO2 emissions. Now the question is how to make a change. If you have an organized waste management system, as we have it in Europe, if you have a well-defined market value for waste because we pay fees for the waste collection, if you have an unorganized waste management system which is operated by the informal sector, thousands of informal operators, if you do not have money, a budget out of fees to get your waste collection properly organized, it's a really big challenge. And when we say, okay, we want to move away, and that's what also Indian politicians say and mayors say in the cities, we want to move away from dump site, even if it's controlled dump site, sanitary landfills, towards more composting, towards more recycling, towards more anaerobic digestion for biogas generation, towards more waste to energy plants. It's nice to have, it's easy to say the technology is available, but it's a matter of fact that in India, whatever we talk in Europe will hardly be applied in, what we apply in Europe can hardly be applied in India because of the human issue what we have. And I'm sure in the next 5 to 10 years we will have substantial transformation in India with regards to thousands of workers in the informal sector. How will they move, including all digitalization support, from an informal operation towards a more efficient and substantial recycling area? India is recycling about 30% of its waste material, 70% is still disposed of. From the organic waste, more or less everything is disposed of, beside the fact that the waste contains about 50 to 60% of waste. So there's a big challenge. We also have to think about how to finance waste management in the future. It's easy to say waste is a resource, we can transform waste into a resource, but if you don't have the money to do it, you will lose. This is my last slide. Oops, sorry. From linear to circular, it's a big idea in Europe, it's a big idea in India, but we are still far away from it. We have a circularity gap in Europe about 90%. We have a circularity gap in India with most probably 95%. And to close the loop, we also have to rethink again, and this was already discussed this morning, what is the consumerism we are looking for. And here just 2 photos about the living of people in India, people coming out from the poorer part of the society to the middle class. Their intention is not to save money or to do something good for the environment or to reduce the CO2 footprint. Their intention is first of all to have a decent life, to consume, to go to the shopping malls and to enjoy life. And this we also have to understand, and this we have also to reflect when we talk about participatory approach and when we talk about what should be the contribution by the Indian people in the future. no question, cities have to reduce and have to contribute that we reduce our ecological footprint, and waste management is just one part of it. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for this insightful presentation. In the same, now for the same subject, we have a GIZ's perspective when GIZ is working on similar issues and circular economy in Indian cities. So I welcome Ms. Monica Bell.
Thank you everyone for joining in this session. So what we are trying to address is waste management in Indian cities. And as Dr. Mutz was mentioning, it's not as easy as it looks at. It's really a humongous task. And I was really thinking today in the morning, is it possible for us to calculate how much waste have we generated? And the next life, you will be given this avatar if you have less waste. So, we have to all start thinking, are we reducing the waste that we generate every day? And don't think that one glass will not matter, because every drop counts. So and I really feel as GIZ, we are trying to do a lot of initiatives with my technical team on closing the loop for waste management in Indian cities. What GIZ is trying to do on policy, as well as on capacity building, and as well as talking to the citizens. We have heard a lot about India, so I would just, in the benefit of the time, just skip the first slides. So we just move on. We know how much waste is getting generated. In India, it needs a land of around 1400 square kilometers, which is as much as Delhi. So we can imagine the waste, even if to dump the waste that India is generating, we need to create a metropolitan city. So this is the humongous task which is lying in front of us. And as GIZ, we are trying to address, and we really feel that every citizen needs to anchor itself for effective waste management and reducing the waste. Let's move on. And as you know, so what is now the solution for this ever-rising crisis, the marine litter crisis, or we talk about depleting the economic resources, or we are talking about, is it any alternative? So I think the alternative is closing the loop. As Dr. Mutz was mentioning, shifting from linear to circular economy, just move on. So now what we see is what the Indians have to do. I think we have to just unlearn the things that we learned. We have to go back to our roots. We have to go back to the traditional, sustainable way. We had the Kerala team, and Kerala is really pioneer in actually going back to the roots, using the steel cutlery, using no plastic bags, using only the materials which are recyclable and effective for use. And I think it's time to unlearn few things. Learning a lot will not make us smart. We have to unlearn, go back to our roots, and see what could be an effective way of waste management. So I think in Expo we come to learn, but I strongly feel if we unlearn few things and go back to our roots, how my grandfather, who always carried his jhola and took me to the sabji market, if I never had a plastic bag, I did not have to really think of going back to the roots. But I really feel, as a mother of 2 kids, I really want my kids and the next generation to unlearn few things, to become the traditional way and to reduce the waste that you generate. So in this loop, we are trying to look at circular economy, and as GIZ, we do advise the states of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Orissa to really come up with guidelines, policies, do trainings, build capacities, also talk to the waste management guys to see. We also should involve the informal sector, because that's the last leg for waste management. And of course, segregating at home is the first step. Let's move on. So then when we talk about integrated solid waste management, as GIZ, we have helped the government of India in making the solid waste management manual. I have my technical team with here. They are there at the Indian Pavilion in case anybody wants to understand integrated waste management in India. GIZ supported several initiatives with government of India, from trying to reduce the waste and also the least preferred way. The least should go to the landfill so that we don't have to create another Delhi for just wasting dump. Just move on. So what GIZ has done, we have tried to do some initiatives in Nashik with this waste to energy plant. We also did the municipal solid waste management. And there was a chance in Orissa when we got a chance to work for the Men's Hockey World Cup. When we entered the state, we were asked, the state is busy doing the Hockey World Cup. Can you solve my World Cup issue? Otherwise, please move out. So then we said, okay, we took this challenge. In 90 days, we tried to prepare a zero waste plan for the Hockey World Cup. We tried that every waste that people bring to the World Cup is finally close the loop and sent for recycling. But it was a huge effort by the government of Orissa as well as by every person who attended the World Cup to make sure that you are putting the waste in the right bin. So that's what, as GI said, we strongly feel if we do not convince the masses, we cannot reach the desired results. So it's important that we all, from the expo, this is also a zero waste event, and it will only effective if everybody does their part into this session. Let's go on. Samia, next. I think that's more or less from our side. So we do a lot of waste advisories. It's all available on GIZ website. I will not get into details, but I would really say that if any city is really stuck somewhere and they would need to refer, they can reach out to GIZ. We are doing some good practices. Of course, we cannot come down and solve problems, but we would be happy to share what we have done for several states and cities in India. So I think that's the next slide. I think that's from my side.
Thank you very much, madam. I think this is just, in terms of very, very critical issues and some of the good solutions and some of the success stories and challenges, everything that you pose. Now I think we have the marketplace, the industries, all of these things we're talking about, planners and experts and all of that. Now what happens at the industry level? What happens when industries come in, when digitization and everything is linked, and what happens and what doesn't? So I have Mr. MSN. Now, Mr. NSN himself said that he's a surgeon who really tries to dissect the problems. So we're looking forward to hear your problems and solutions.
Yeah, thank you. Can I have the clicker? Okay, so I think I'm between you and your lunch, so I'll be very, very quick. And Monica, it's brilliant stuff, Bhuneshwar. I was not aware, so this is amazing stuff. Okay, can I? Okay, so what I'm going to present is not going to be something which is the traditional smart cities stuff. What I've taken is the few examples which the cities in India have implemented and going through the implementation on the technology front, and those civic solutions or civic challenges which have been solved using those technology have a high amount of replicability possibility. Yeah. Can I upload? Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so the focus is on various sectors and how do I solve these sectoral solutions using something which is what we famously in all technology firms call beyond the horizon solution. So can I look at a future solution or a future technology and solve this? The first one, and I can actually have a quiz and everyone can come back and tell me, is there any other country other than India which has done an integrated command and control center? No one. Someone has done surveillance, someone has traffic, someone has done something which is relevant to a disaster management, Rio, London, Madrid, or Barcelona, for example. These are all verticalized solutions which were actually went horizontal later on after the deployment. So what India did, and which was something for the first time, is a cloud-based deployment of multiple cities under one single umbrella. So integrated command and control center. I'm not going to talk about individual cities. I'm talking about an aggregated platform, completely on cloud, which actually looks at only the SLAs and SOPs for delivery of services. This is something which is now being not only taken up in India, but everywhere across the globe. The technology firms are taking this as something which is replicable globally and taking it out. So there are two states who have already done it, which is Madhya Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. And going forward, there will be a couple of more states who are doing that. This is an integrated, so the sensors at the city level, the platform is on the cloud, the service delivery is through apps. And the command center is, or a visualization center, I would like to say, could be a mobile device or it could be a visualization center. Okay, so the clicker is going fast. Okay, the second one is the darling of all the street light manufacturers. And I heard the CEO of Citlum yesterday and I was talking to her also. Everyone across in Europe whether it is Sitlum here or whether it's Simcon in US or whether it is any other company, they have been doing the street light. But the street light as a gross savings model is not the best way of doing business. If it is a government funded, because what happens is when you do a baselining of street lights, unfortunately in India, if you do a baselining of street lights, you will not be able to get the right number because the number of street poles as per the papers or as per on the ground are totally different. Number of lights are the LED lights which needs to be transformed, therefore it changes. So the baseline assessment itself becomes faulty. So, but who's the one person? The outcome is a good visually aesthetic looking city. But who is the biggest beneficiary by doing this? It's not a streetlight company, it's not going to be a city, it's a telecom infrastructure company. Because the most important thing for a telco is to have a right of way for the city to lay its fiber for 4G, 5G or XG going forward. It's important. And also to have an access on a very long term, which is 15 to 20 years horizon, an access to areas where they can put up their small cell infrastructure. Because today, I'll give you an example. Today you are actually moving on a road and that's a data in motion. But suddenly the government decides that I want to either go underground or I want to put a flyover. So data in motion, where the small cell infrastructure is put, becomes irrelevant. Because while you go up in the Gs, which is 4G and 5G, the radius becomes much, much smaller. So your small cell infrastructure needs to be dynamically there. So therefore, the experiment was done for one city, thereafter the second cities and multiple cities in India, where the integration of smart elements, telco, rights monetization and streetlight was combined together, and all the projects mentioned out here, whether it is Vadodara, Bhopal and NDMC, are all PPP premium. City hasn't paid, city has got paid back. So that's a PPP premium models. I don't know. Okay. Now, next few slides will be about the startups. So Bandicoot is a beautiful startup from Kerala. Trivandrum, the kids actually built this entire solution. And manual scavenging, as you know, it's prohibited by law, but in most of the countries, not just in India, there has been deaths reported in Southeast Asia, there have been deaths reported in Middle East, Africa. But how do you actually move the manual scavenging to an automation? So kids from Bandicoot, they said, I use robotics to clean it. But it's not only the robotics company which can do it alone. So there's a real heart surgeon who was based out of UK, and he said the heart arteries are similar to a sewerage pipeline. The choke in the sewerage pipeline is similar to the cholesterol built up in your arteries. So he actually uses a robotic to give you a visualization of the choke pipeline, and Genorobotics or the Bandicoot cleans it. So it's a combination of two startups getting together and trying to do that. So they did a couple of cities, but most importantly, Karnataka decided that they will actually buy these robots for 4 wards and start doing it. And they are jump starting the entire process. So that's one big solution that for a very important civic challenge. Okay, everyone is doing it, but the enormity and the size is what I want to mention it here. The AI-driven surveillance, for example, one of the cities in India is doing garbage collection management using AI and the recognition of that, which is Varanasi. But here is about the facial recognition and the counting. It's a place where on a single day about 40 million people came. 15 million people came. So on a one single day, we needed to know what is the per square meter density of a person. If you see on the extreme left, it says 1.80 per square meter. So the camera on the edge is intelligent enough to say that after 2.25 or 2.5, you need to send a message back, there's going to be a crowd management required. So that was what it was done in one of the biggest events in India, which happened in January of this year. I don't know. Okay. Okay. If I tell you that the biggest killer amongst all is not the deaths because of the riots or war or anything, it's mosquitoes. And there are only 8 species of mosquitoes across the globe which account for almost 90% of the deaths. and therefore the kids, they actually said that, can I actually identify three things? One, the gender. I'm so sorry, I'm not gender specific, but it's a female mosquito which actually carries the so it's a gender identification. The second is species, because based upon the region you need to know which species, because it's in a normal water, which is a clean water, it's a dengue mosquito. In a stagnant water, it's a malaria mosquito. So by doing that analysis, they were able to tell that where and what type of fumigation is required. And then on top of that, there was a drone company which is called MoHUA. They said, while you do this entire thing, I will find out the larvae formation which is happening in the lake. 7 days, from an egg to a mosquito is a 7-day larvae cycle. Within the 7 days, I'll tell you where is the larvae formation during using a computer vision, and they're doing 40 lakes across Hyderabad. So that's the other. So these two startups are putting together their efforts and finding out the right way of fumigation in advance, right chemical, and very focused effort. Yeah. Last two. Just bear with me on this, because so we came with cities have property tax as one of the revenue models and their land monetization other, but the other most important which is neglected is the advertising billboards. So we wanted to know how much is the leakage from the billboards, because if you give a contract for 7 years and you want to put a billboard, but later on the cities don't know, as per the contract, what was the site for which I gave the billboard contract and what is the size of that billboard. So we asked startups to come and give an example or give a pitch, and they said, using augmented reality, I'll be able to put my mobile phone and tell how much is the revenue leakage at that site, or that site is legal or illegal. So they were able to find out, and Hubli came with this RFP and they engaged a startup to do this entire activity. So there are solutions for civic challenges which most of the large firms would have not thought of, but the startups are doing that. And the last now, Google takes you to the street level, probably till a building, but it will never take you to the door. Therefore, the idea of the Zipper, which is the company which is doing this, they said, can I actually do a door-to-door complete mapping, a digital door number, so that I can do a lot of other things. For example, if you're doing a door-to-door collection of garbage, DDN will work. If you want to do a direct benefits to exact that residence, DDN will work. So it's an integration of a map and a digital door and creates a holistic solution. So why I'm actually talking about these things are, everyone has spoken about the large issues. There are small interventions which are happening on and using technology, which are making a huge amount of what you call is the pole vaulting of solving the solution. So that's what I thought I'll share with you, and that's what India is going through for the last 4 years or so. Thank you so much.
Thank you, NSN. And now we have a system architect from Amazon Internet Services. Amazon Internet Services is right now advising Government of India into their digitization model. So welcome, Mr. Mandar Patil.
Yeah, thanks a lot, everyone. Good afternoon. Can I have a clicker? So I would like to thank Mr. Murthy because he kind of set the context for me, what I'm going to talk about. So essentially, I'm going to talk about modern smart city architecture, essentially on the cloud platform. This one, right? So when you talk about implementing any kind of solution, then we should look at it as a smart city as a platform. Because when we talk about smart city mission of India, we are going to talking about 100 smart cities going to go live in India, and there will be many more, like what we have seen in the data points. So the key challenge of implementing any smart city is that every city works in silos, right? So they don't talk to each other, and there is a lot of meaningful information in between, and we should learn from each other. So that is when the the concept of city as a platform should come in, wherein the data flows from one implementation to another. So this is just a generic slide. When we talk about a smart city implementation, traditionally it is driven by the command and control platform. And who are the key stakeholders for this? So first and foremost are the citizens of India or citizens of any country. Of course, there are a lot of IoT devices out there. So those are the system which are generating a lot of events in the system. There is a legacy application you need to talk to, like consensus data, the geographical data, the address data. A lot of other systems feeding in the information, like the health and education and field force, of course, the people who work for the municipalities or the countries. The ICCC platform essentially takes all this data in. They kind of process the data, apply the rule engine, do the standard operating procedure, and then gives the outcomes. So who are the recipients of this platform, right? So one is the citizens of India, who gets a lot of alert from the smart city implementation. There are people like department heads who want to do the town planning and can take the data point driven decisions. Of course, there are operators and the field workforce within the city. They act on it, right? So if there is an event, there is an alert in the system, someone needs to be there to act on it, right? So pretty much on the left hand side you see the stakeholders, and the right hand side you see the recipients, and the smart city platform can kind of connect from every stakeholder to every recipient. So going into a little bit of an implementation, I am from the systems and solutions background, so I just try to put forward a logical diagram. I know it is difficult for everyone to grasp, but I will try to be as simple. I already got that feedback. So essentially I'm going to talk about is that, of course, there are a lot of partners in this event right now who has IoT-based devices, which generates a lot of data. The data is getting processed. It is not just IoT events, right? So we are talking about taking video feeds coming from the CCTV network. We also need to be mindful of how are we going to process that. A lot of structured and unstructured data coming into system. We have to process it. We have to generate meaningful insights out of it. And essentially on the right-hand side, we have to push that data to citizens in terms of web application, mobile application, or any other smart applications. But this is just a logical architecture. So when we want to double click on it and we focus upon the IoT aspect of it. Yeah. So talking about IoT itself, so it's not easy as we say it, right? So there are a lot of moving parts when you talk to a lot of IoT devices. They are on the vehicles, they are on the street lights, they are on the roads. There are so many interfaces, right? So just to manage the IoT kind of ecosystem, it's a headache in itself. Now that technological evolution is happening, and last 2-3 years we have been seeing that there are a lot of edge devices. Not all IoT devices push data to the cloud or to the platform, and it processes it. No. So there is an intelligence on the edge as well. So it needs a special kind of software to be written, to be installed on the camera so that edge devices could make sense out of it. So this is just one aspect of the solution. So if you look at each and every orange box in the ecosystem, so it is an architecture in itself. And if you put all of them together, it's kind of very large-scale complex architecture. But we give it a thought that what are we trying to do as part of the implementation is concerned. So first important aspect is that data should flow as quickly as possible. Data should give you meaningful insights so that you can take actions on it. And those are the predominant ask as far as the smart city implementation is concerned. But having said that, what is the lowest common denominator as far as the implementation is concerned? It's really a platform, right? Where are you going to host it? What are the benefits of that platform? So the key ask from the platform is that the platform should be available 24/7 so that no services are down. Platform should work in SLA manner, and platform should have a capability to adapt to the technology change. So today we are going to talk about conventional analytics. Right now we are talking about doing AI and ML kind of analytics. Whether our platform is open to that adoption or not. So here I'm going to talk about how AWS can help you as a platform, right? So these are a lot of boxes with colorful services of AWS, but essentially it flows from left to right. The first section is the data ingestion, which has kind of platform itself will give you capability to integrate in terms of IoT, in terms of video, in terms of a standard system, or in terms of the APIs you want to expose as the open data source, right? So these are all out-of-the-box services which are driven by stringent SLA as a platform. So moment you come inside the business logic aspect of it, So today we are going to talk about cities which has 50 million people coming together, right? So tomorrow that number will grow. We are talking about 60 million people. Are we going to change the platform? Answer is no. So existing platform should scale itself to address the demands of the city. Right? That is where the auto scaling of the database and auto scaling of the compute horsepower is inbuilt within the platform. When we talk about the innovation, when we talk about the AI, ML, we want to talk about the training the models, and based upon every country's need, we need a lot of GPU horsepower, right? We need to have a lot of compute power. That platform should have that capability to have that horsepower, use it as you go, and then, don't stop it as and when you are done with it. So this is kind of real-time analytics we are going to talk about here. Talking about data lakes, these are all the buzzwords, right? So what is the difference between conventional warehouse system and the data lakes is that data lakes is something which can do what data warehouse can do, but it can also process the unstructured data, right? So we are talking about videos and audios. How are you going to process it? Are they just the database queries? The answer is no. So the way we treat the unstructured data is different than the structured data. So data lake is something which holds everything together and help you apply your algorithms on top of it and get meaningful insight of it. The last aspect of is the visualization, right? So we want to give this data to as many as people possible so that it is useful for them. And who are the key stakeholders? Citizens, the young population. We need to speak to them in the language that they understand. Can we send a SMS to a person who is 18 years old? Probably he will not even open the SMS. We want to interact with them from the social fields, right? So that component of pushing the data out to the end stakeholders is really important. So that's in a nutshell that any smart city as a platform that any smart city should ask. So I'll skip to the next slide. These are the typical benefits that you will get from the platform. And the only really question is that how we want to adopt it and how we want to make it successful. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patil. I think I'll now hand over the mic to Georg.
Yes, so finally we've come to an end of our session. And I have 4 big thank yous. For everyone, I want your hands, please. First, a big thank you to the audience for your attentive listening. Thanks a lot. Second, big thank you to all the panelists and speakers for the very interesting inputs. And then a big thank you to GIZ and MoHUA team for organizing this event. Thank you. And then last but not least, a big thank you to Samia, our moderator, for bringing us through this event. Thanks a lot, Samia. So for any further questions to you, to Mr. Pedro, and also to Veena, after this session, you are at the Indian Pavilion. And right now, we would like to make a group photo right here. So anyone who is interested in making a group photo, please join us on the stage. Thank you.